Neonic Void Productions presents.
All right. Well, to get started, wait, do we need to do our introductions again?
Yes. Hi, welcome to Spookocalypse. We all do all things fucking spooky up in this bitch. What's good? What's poppin'? It's your host, Zio, coming to you live from underneath your bed in your closet. Looking a little roomy in here, talking to some goat man. You know how it be.
Theo, you're back in the closet? Come on, man. It's 21st century. Come back. Come on out again. We all know.
My guy. We already know.
Have you looked outside the closet? It's fucking gross out here. Ew. It's better in there.
That's fair. I had a mini fridge in my closet.
I had a whole other pocket universe talking to Goatman and having tea and Turkish delights with some ice bitch. Like I was living. She was serving. And then there was lion Jesus, but that's fine.
There was also a well that led me down into a magical fairy tale land where I had to fight an eldritch terror.
How dare you? I haven't finished reading that yet. Fuck you. How dare you give me spoilers like that? And now I just need to finish it. But anyway, hi, I'm Zio.
I already told you that shit anyway, so.
We're joined with, of course, Bunyip Housekeeper, Mad Chairman, and Kaiju Groupie. Kaiju Slut, Kaiju Groupie. Kaiju Groupie.
Same difference.
From the Book Watchers, being a slut for the Kaijus.
What's good?
Housekeeping.
Yeah, if you like this podcast, make sure you follow and rate us, whatever site you watch your podcast. Follow us on Twitter or anymore. I'm gonna still call it that. Our handle is at Spookocalypse. That's at SPOOKOCYPSE. New episodes of Spookocalypse get uploaded every Saturday. Links are going to be down in the description for other podcasts that are part of the Neonic family. We are also on YouTube. If you are from YouTube, hi, hello, welcome. Share, like, subscribe, drop a comment on whatever you want us to review next. We're going to be doing some spooky shit, and Mints, we're going to be on the pillow.
So, today's Mint is nuclear flavored.
You could have come with something like really sour, but it has like a nuclear spin on it.
Something's weird about it.
I don't know. Cosmic plankton or something? Nuclear microbes? Trying to get into the theme of Shin Godzilla here, because that's the origin of Shin Godzilla.
You could just say something nuclear and then have it be like lemon.
Radioactive lemon.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got it. We got there eventually, y'all.
We got there, y'all. We had to take a few little trips and pit stops. We're there.
Also, I briefly forgot that Twitter was renamed to something else. So now we're going to have to refer to it as like the social media platform formerly known as Twitter.
I'm still going to call it Twitter. I don't give a fuck.
So today we're keeping to the trend of the kaijus for the next 2 weeks. Today's episode, we're making a trip back to Godzilla. We first did the first Godzilla, and now we're doing the latest Japanese Godzilla. I mean, -1 has not been released yet, so we don't count that one. But the latest Japanese Godzilla, aka Shin Godzilla, we're doing that today. And that is my favorite Godzilla. And trust your boy's got a TED Talk planned after the plot is explained on why he is my favorite Godzilla. Anyway,
So I'm actually really intrigued. I want to hear this. So like I'm just gonna dive
Speed
right
run it.
into this.
Speed run it.
Let's just speed run it. Okay, I want to hear Zio pop off because I popped off last
Now,
week. Oh,
before
2 weeks
we
ago.
before yeah, you popped off 2 weeks ago. Now before we go, Shin Godzilla was released in 2016, budget to 15 million in US dollars, and the box office for that May was 78 million in US dollars. It made pretty good money, right? It was released in July 25th, 2016 in Tokyo, but released to the wider Japan July 29th of that same year. And then it was released in the States and Canada from October 11th through the 18th, and then had an encore viewing on the 22nd and 27th of October of that year because it sold pretty good money in the States. It's directed by. Go on. Sorry.
Go ahead. Finish.
It was directed by two people. Shinji. Like, how you say his last name? Higuchi? Shinji Higuchi, and then.
Higuchi.
Yeah, I was right. Higuchi. And then Hideaki. I'm terrible with names. Ano,
Hideaki Anno.
Which is the creator, not the creator, he's the director of Neon Genesis Evangelion for the anime. So that's where he is famed from. And of course, the production company was Toho Pictures and Sin Bazaar. And it was distributed by Toho. Plot.
And did I skip a possibly important lab to go see this movie? Yes, I did.
I did
Like-
not see this movie in theater. I saw this much later when it hit digital, personally. Unfortunately.
When I found out that this movie was going to be released in the United States, I made sure to find which movie theater it was going to be at, and when I found out the time, and you bet your ass I bought my ticket like weeks in advance. And then I found out that I have a lab like for a specific project that was part of a big grade, and I was like, that sucks, bro. Won't be there.
I'm sick.
I'm sick.
Boo, you whore.
No, I didn't give a fuck. I told him straight up. Yeah, I'm gonna go see a movie now. Bye. I don't give a fuck.
Honesty. So
Anyway, so let's get to the plot. So Shin Godzilla, just to put this out there, they decided to take a step back and go back to like the origins of Godzilla. This is basically just a Godzilla runs the show type of movie. There's no other monster that he fights. It's just him. He's the sole monster of this movie. It does not connect to the original Godzilla.
no. It's like
This
a reboot.
It was supposed to be like its own standalone thing, its own reboot. Like instead of Godzilla popping up in 1954, he pops up now in modern times. They still give him his nuclear origins. So instead of him coming from like some sort of deep underwater trench off the coast of Japan, he actually pops up in the middle of Tokyo Bay. That's pretty much how the movie starts. It's like that's what I love about this movie is like it's Godzilla from like start to finish.
Yeah.
You know, we get a whole lot of the big G. So it starts with like the Japanese Coast Guard finding a abandoned small ship, like a little boat, yacht, whatever you want to call it. Was it a yacht?
Yes, it was a yacht.
Okay, well, it didn't meet the size requirement in my definition of yacht, but either way, they discover an abandoned yacht drifting in the middle of Tokyo Bay, and when the Coast Guard searches it, they don't find anyone on board. They do find an envelope in like the mess hall, but other than that, there's nothing anything to determine like what happened to the owner of the boat. And while they're in the middle of investigating, a a massive geyser of of steam erupts in the middle of the bay. Um, it's very odd because it's very like confusing for the Japanese government because as far as they know, there is no geothermal or any kind of geological feature within Tokyo Bay that would cause a geyser like that to erupt. Their best guess is that it's some form of underwater volcano. Again, there is nothing that was anything geothermal in nature that's in the center of Tokyo Bay to cause it. So there's a lot of speculation. There's a scene in Tokyo. I don't know what the tunnel is called. There's an underwater tunnel that goes directly under Tokyo Bay that connects either side of the bay. And there's a scene where it collapsed, and you see like this red gunk flooding into the tunnel. It's considered a disaster and puts the government on high alert. While they're still trying to figure it out, several of the cabinet members suggest that it could be a living organism. And immediately the guys laughed out of the room. They're like, nothing's big enough to cause something like this. Literally 2 seconds after this fool says that, a massive hail rises up out of the geyser. And then they get the reports in like, yeah, so there's a giant creature coming out of the geyser. It's just a tail, but
He looked
it's
real
there.
stupid.
He looked real stupid, yeah.
Dumb.
Well,
Really fucking dumb, for real.
yeah, he fugly. He fugly. That's the term I used for like Godzilla's first form in this movie. So yeah, Godzilla was reimagined as like something like a tadpole. Like I see this more of like almost like a, because like when he comes out he's fugly looking and it's like he's like a tadpole, right? So now they know it's a living creature. They're trying to figure out, okay, is it dangerous? I mean, it's what's causing the water to like boil and erupt in steam. At this point, they don't know that he's radioactive. All they know is that he's causing a disturbance. They make a public announcement saying, well, based on what the information we have, it doesn't look like this thing can come on land. It does. Our reports show that it does have legs, but based on its size and shape, it doesn't look like it'll be able to support itself on land. And then right after he says that, someone comes onto the stage and informs him that it came on land. That took its first
Godzilla's
step.
like, yo, bitches, y'all thought.
Yeah, you fucking thought. And so it goes to the next scene where we get the full full frontal of Godzilla first form, and he's like these big old googly eyes, all grotesque looking. He's just waddling through the streets, right? It's very mindless. This first shape of Godzilla is very mindless in what it's doing. It's just walking, and it's taking a stroll right down Tokyo Boulevard. I don't know the name of the actual street it's walking down, but as it's walking, you could see like there are these gill-like structures on the side of its neck, and as it's walking, like blood comes out of it. So it's like a hint that that Godzilla is adapting as it's going. It's like continuously evolving. The government is forced to evacuate the surrounding areas, and uh, they immediately consult their constitution when it comes to self-defense, and they find that, well, this falls into the category of Japanese self-defense force action. So they immediately call in their military. They set up they began setting up a plan of attack. They send in some attack helicopters to surround Godzilla, and they were about to initiate an attack. Before they do, Godzilla stands up and begins to change more. So at first, he was when he came out of the water, he was hunched over. He had these little stubs, like literal stubs for arms, and then his body begins to change, allowing him to stand more further upright. instead of just hunched over. The spikes on his back get a little slightly more pronounced. He actually grows arms, even though they're still little stubs. Still has something more recognizable as arms, and he lets out his belt. He roars for the first time, and it's like they actually use the original Godzilla roar from the original movie. So I like that. I was like, okay, so it's a nod to the original Godzilla right there.
Yeah.
The Defense Force is about to attack Godzilla, but they were ordered to stand down because there were still civilians in the area. At this point, though, Godzilla decides to run back and jump into the ocean because you see the spines on his back begin to glow, and you see heat begins to radiate out of Godzilla's back. And they later confirm that this is most likely due to the fact that because Godzilla's physiology is nuclear in nature, his body is not yet adapted to keeping itself cool and preventing itself from overheating. So he had to just run back into the ocean where he can cool his body down. Now for the next, I'd say, oh god, like I don't know how long this takes. For the next portion of the movie, it's really just the Japanese government trying to figure out what the fuck happened, what are we gonna do, and trying to figure out the origin of Godzilla. Um, so they call in experts from all over the country. At first, they consult like biologists, zoologists, and a few other scientists to try to like get a clear, definitive answer about Godzilla. And they're basically a bunch of monkeys scratching their heads because they don't know what he is. They eventually call in a consultant, a junior consultant slash analyst, who is able to more or less just from analyzing the footage and the evidence of Godzilla, determined that not only is he a like free nature, but he's possibly some form of exotic creature that was mutated by nuclear waste that may have been dumped into Tokyo Bay. Now the government cabinet, they don't exactly admit to there being nuclear waste in the Tokyo Bay, but it is alluded that at one point nuclear waste was dumped into the bay, which probably caused some form of microorganism to mutate and grow into what is Godzilla now. Um, they eventually consult the American. Eventually, an official from the American government comes and makes a deal with them. She tells them that they want everything they know about that they have on Godzilla, and she in turn will share everything that America has figured out about Godzilla themselves, because apparently they knew. Not surprising, they knew that
Yeah.
Godzilla was coming because they had uh, research from a Dr. Sarazawa. Uh, so there was a scientist named Dr. Sarazawa who had been discredited in Japan before moving to America and worked as a scientist and slash engineer at a nuclear power plant before eventually returning to Japan. Now, I'm not entirely sure how Sarazawa knew that Godzilla existed, but somehow he had managed to uh, get a sample of Godzilla's DNA and fully map it. And now remember earlier I mentioned that when when the Coast Guard was searching the yacht, uh, they had found an envelope on the yacht. Well, that very envelope was confiscated by the American government, and after analyzing it, they determined that it was actually a full map of Godzilla, a full 3D map of Godzilla's DNA. And after cutting a deal with the Japanese government, the American official shares this map with the sorry, I lost my train of thought. What do they call it? The task force. My bad. She shares it with the task force that was created to investigate and figure out a way to stop Godzilla. Um, at first, they're looking at it, and it's just a flat piece of paper with a bunch of just lines and shapes on it, and they're not really sure how to like really like understand it. until someone gets the idea to fold it like a piece of origami paper. And this gives them a clearer, more three-dimensional shape of Godzilla's DNA. They can infer that Godzilla is not only the highest form of evolution on Earth, he is also nuclear powered in nature. They're because part of their investigation was trying to figure out, okay, what does he eat? What exactly could keep a creature as big as Godzilla sustained? And that analyst I mentioned earlier figures it out, and she confirms that Godzilla is nourished by nuclear fission. His body is a walking nuclear fission reactor. And it's later confirmed when power plants all over Japan began to detect radiation leaks all over the place, and they're not sure where it's coming from. But after doing a quick sweep over the path of destruction that Godzilla left during his first walk, they figure out that there is radioactive contamination in that area. Not long after this, Godzilla in his final form shows up. And this is truly Godzilla. This is Shin Godzilla. He is over 400 feet tall. He still kind of fugly looking, but he is badass. He doesn't have the googly eyes anymore. But for starters, his body is pretty similar to how Godzilla traditionally looks. His skin is very mottled and what I'm trying to figure out the right term. It's very grotesque looking, deformed, I guess you could say. He has his signature dorsal spines going down his back. His arms are still these little stubby things, but at least he has hands now. I've said this many times about Shin Godzilla, but his tail is in business for itself.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's longer than his body. It's
yep,
taller
it is.
than yeah. The length of the tail is taller than his body.
I think the tail alone is probably 500 feet,
Yeah.
and at the
Hello.
Yeah, he's messing up the
The internet's better.
the audio. Yeah.
government does.
I don't think he realizes he.
Well, they prioritize evacuating civilians from Godzilla's path, and they begin coming up with a course of action to defeat Godzilla. The first and most obvious thing to do is just to attack it with an all-out defense force operation. So they use a combination of attack helicopters and tanks that were set up in Godzilla's path. And this proves to be completely ineffective. They shoot everything they have at Godzilla and does not slow him down. He just walks right through the defense line. And this is just, of course, this, of course, is not good. All right. Their full military force was not able to slow down Godzilla. Eventually, the prime minister is informed by the American ambassador that the United States military has decided to get involved, and they will provide aid in trying to fight Godzilla. And the aid that they send in are a pair of B-2 stealth bombers. I'm not sure if that's what they're actually called, but they are the giant triangular shaped stealth bombers. They warn the Japanese government that they need to clear out their forces and make sure that all civilians are in shelters or evacuated, because they are going to be launching an attack at a specific time. and there's not going to be any kind of delay or no ifs, ands, buts, or ors, which is honestly like when I saw that part, I was like, hey, you right.
That's the most American thing they would do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because it's no there unlike the Japanese Defense Force, which has clear defined terms of engagement when it comes to utilizing the military. The United States military does not have a someone drop out.
Yeah, they said they might have to.
Oh, okay, that's right. Oh yeah, it's already 10 o'clock here. Okay, never mind. So yeah, so the United States military does not have limitations like that. I mean, we do in terms of rules of engagement, but when it comes to dealing with a threat, the goal is not to completely prevent uh, collateral damage, but to minimize it as much as possible. And the Japanese are like, oh crap, we need to get everyone safety, move our forces out of the way.
I like the
And they
map they
managed.
showed. They're like, this is the map that they're of the bombing area that they're gonna do. It's literally the entire city. Like, there's no areas that aren't covered by little circles of red. Like,
Yeah, that is unfortunate and accurate.
like the Americans were just aching for another chance to bomb the Japanese. Like,
That's fucked up,
Mm.
but it's true. Like,
Yeah.
goddamn,
That's
I'm
true.
like, okay, I'm just like, okay, damn, I'm sensing some. I feel, I'm sensing some.
Was
What's
2
the
bombs
word?
not enough?
What do you
nope.
Was well more like hundreds. It was more than 2 bombs that we dropped on the Japanese, but let's
Yeah.
not.
I
That's not
meant
why we're
like
here.
nukes, but please
I
continue.
true. That's true. So anyway, the since the bombing area was also going to encompass the Japanese parliament, the cabinet had to evacuate as well. So while many of the civilians and government leaders were evacuating, the U.S. military initiated its attack. So it was very this was this was a surprise attack. So it just came out of nowhere. Once the U.S. military attacked, they dropped the first set of bombs on Godzilla, and they were, I want to say, extremely effective because unlike the Japanese attack, where it didn't even phase Godzilla, the American attack actually stumbled him, and the bombs, when they hit Godzilla, they actually caused him to bleed and exploded. And while it did hurt Godzilla, it didn't exactly deter him. If anything, it pissed him off. And we get this now. This scene right here. Let me tell you, I was living for this scene. Okay, it was just pure destruction. This encompassed Godzilla's ability knacked for just pure destruction. Because after the initial set of bombs, we see Godzilla just roar in just pure anger and pain, and then he just stoops over a bit, and you see his spines begin to go from just this dull red that they typically like. Godzilla, just want to point out there, glows red on its own. It's
Yeah.
default color, and then it goes from a deep red to a brilliant violet. His whole body basically glows violet, not just his spines. Spines are the brightest, and um, it cuts to the bomber circling around, uh, getting ready to prepare for a second attack. Goes to the characters all over the city. They can see the glow coming from Godzilla, and they're like, what is that for?" Godzilla opens his mouth, and his lower jaw splits in two, stretching even like wider. And the first set of Godzilla's attack, he begins to spew this black smoke from his mouth, and the smoke like quickly engulfs the surrounding city, the city surrounding him. And then there's a quick little close up of one of his eyes, and this like metallic reflective
It's a membrane that covers his eye.
yeah, just like quickly like closes his eye, and then the smoke ignites, and we get this massive wave of fire. Like it's not blue fire like his like traditional Godzilla atomic breath, but it's inferred that this is atomic fire, and it quickly sweeps through the city in front of him. Like it is a massive jet of just a massive jet of flame that demolishes the surrounding area, the surrounding buildings around him. But that is not his actual atomic breath. That is this is just the appetizer. Now for the main course. As the flame is continuously spewing from his mouth, we see it gradually begin to narrow into a thin beam, and as it narrows down, it begins to glow brighter and turns violet. And what we see is his actual atomic breath, which is this beam of pure destruction. Godzilla lifts his he's bent over at this point, so the beam is just shooting straight down into the ground in front of him. But he lifts his head, lifts his head up, pointing the beam up straight into the sky, and he completely like just cuts one of the stealth bombers in half. The other bombers quickly circle around for a counterattack. Godzilla stops his beam and bends over once again. The remaining two or three stealth bombers drop the remaining payload of bombs on Godzilla, but before they can even hit him, Godzilla shoots out dozens of other beams straight out of his back. So these beams are coming out of his dorsal spines. So it's like this laser circus of just pure awesomeness. When I saw the scene, I was just like, what the fuck am I looking at? That is like, you guys remember that promotion for the Australians, like Australia's Got Talent? That one dude who's sitting in the audience and he's just like just awestruck and like big open mouth, like just jaw gape, everything. That was me in this in the theater. Just like, no way. Like shooting beams out of his, like I was behooved. And hit all these like dozens of beams shooting out of his back. They destroy the bombs before they even hit Godzilla, and he tilts his back a little bit, and like several of the beams cut through the remaining bombers, destroying them. And Godzilla stops this his attack from his rear, and immediately like draws in a breath and fires his primary attack from his mouth. And we see his beam cut through dozens of buildings. The beam does end up hitting the helicopter that the Japanese leaders were escaping in, and destroys that. And like we just see Godzilla just like sweeping his beam through the city, just like cutting through hundreds of buildings at once. Like this is just like one pure destructive path. Eventually, Godzilla's beam begins to deteriorate and turns back into just that jet of flame. And Godzilla just shoots out a continuous jet of flame that just burns through the whole city. And the scene that we see is just like all of Tokyo is on fire. Just on fire. Eventually, Godzilla stops. And he takes a few steps forward before he stops. And it looks like he just freezes in place. And it's later confirmed that because Godzilla expended a lot of his nuclear energy, I guess he just needed to stop and cool down. And I think this is interesting because it implies that Godzilla's body is incredibly dense, and without the heat and energy from his nuclear heart, his body is just one big dense block. So he freezes perfectly in place like a statue once those energy levels go down and his body cools. Mm-hmm. So Japanese and also the United States are facing a dilemma. Like Godzilla just proved to be even more dangerous than he was before. Like before, we just thought he was a dumb animal taking a stroll through Japan. Now we know he's a superpower all on its own. So, the task force, after observing Godzilla's energy levels and any other data they've collected from surveillance of Godzilla, they determined that he's basically in a low power mode and he's slowly building his energy levels back up, and it's going to take I believe it's going to take like several months before he's back to full strength and begins walking again. So in that time frame, they need to figure out a way to completely neutralize Godzilla. And this time they can't just use conventional means through the military. They're going to have to do something scientific and something that targets his body directly. So while they're trying to figure this out, they learned that the United States conferred with the UN, and it was decided through a unanimous vote that before Godzilla wakes up again, they are going to take nuclear action and use a nuclear bomb. And I'm just like, oh damn. First
I told you they were just itching for it.
They're just itching.
Just itching to drop another nuke on Japan. Like, my God. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna lie. Like this movie, like I was like, I feel attacked by this movie. Like they're really throwing they're really gunning for us Americans, aren't they? Like first the stealth bombers, the stealth bomb attacks on Godzilla, and now nuclear bomb. Like
I mean, it's not without just cause, honestly.
I know, but still, just the fact that I was like, I feel attacked. As an American,
military and the government be trigger happy, so
they really would. Either way, so the Japanese, the government is now facing a potential nuclear bombing. And while it is intended to help them and help defeat Godzilla, they're not entirely convinced that it will solve the problem. Especially because Godzilla feeds on nuclear radiation, and a atomic bomb is basically one big nuclear smorgasbord. So what if this doesn't kill Godzilla, but instead makes him stronger and more dangerous? That there's just too many what ifs, and if this was like any other nation, like, do you really think you're gonna want an atomic bomb dropped on your ass? I don't think so.
no. So they come up with another way of handling the situation.
They certainly do. After scratching their heads for a few days, several sleepless nights, and also the Japanese government having to basically completely rebuild itself because all of its leaders were killed by Godzilla. The new prime minister that they actually found was the former head of, I believe, agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. The task force comes up with an idea that Godzilla's blood must act as a form of cooling system. It keeps his body from overheating, and it keeps him stable, right? So why not come up with a solution that could be administered to Godzilla, that will basically cause him to freeze. It'll solve the problem.
Blood clots. Basically, one big blood clot.
Yes, like use some form of chemical solution to coagulate his body, and it'll freeze him, and it'll also solve the issue of his radioactive heart, because his heart is one big fission reactor So it'll not only stop Godzilla, but it'll prevent him from like destabilizing and melting down. So the only people that they know of that can help them would be, I believe it was the Germans, right, or was it the French?
It was the French.
It was the French. So it was they turned to the French government, who have they have specialists that do know of a way that they could administer some sort of chemical that will neutralize Godzilla's radiation. And after coming to an agreement, the French and the Japanese work night and day to mass produce an entire enough of this coagulant to administer to Godzilla. And they come up with they set a deadline to just so several days before the nuke was to be dropped on Godzilla, and they plan their course of action. Now it's going to take. Now this plan involves several steps. First step is they get the United States government to loan them a large number of unmanned drones to launch an attack on Godzilla. And while this kit Godzilla, the goal is to exhaust Godzilla. So get Godzilla to fire off as much of his nuclear power as possible, slow him down, and then utilizing several well-placed bombs and at one point a train, so like the whole like force of trains. They want to get Godzilla. They want to knock Godzilla down, get him on his ass, so that way they can administer the coagulant. So they manage to do this. They get everything in place. They launch their first set of attacks, and Godzilla, of course, he was pretty much frozen this entire time, still recovering his energy. But when they attack Godzilla, he wakes up, starts moving again, and starts firing off his atomic blast. This when he starts this, he just fires off a continuous beam of energy from his back, dozens of beams taking out the drones and any missiles that were launched at him. And this quickly exhausts Godzilla, so his laser circus gets neutralized, and the bombs begin to hit him head on. However, Godzilla begins to focus his attack from his mouth, and as we quickly find out, his tail. He can shoot an atomic beam from his tail.
Mm-hmm.
I did say that tail is in business for itself.
Yeah.
So with his tail and his breath attack, he is defending himself. He quickly defends himself from the drone and from the drone attack. One point, the military blows up a building and knocks it down on top of Godzilla, which knocks Godzilla on his ass. So while Godzilla's down, they quickly send in these trucks, these chemical trucks with the coagulant, and they begin unfurling their hoses and start pouring the chemical mixture inside Godzilla's mouth. Now they have several waves of this that they needed to approach Godzilla. So the first initial batch of chemicals gets dispersed into his mouth before he gets back up again. The military launches several more attacks and managed to knock him on his ass again. Then they're able to administer the last bit of the coagulant into Godzilla's mouth. When it gets back up, it looks like the mixture isn't working at first, although they can tell that his body's rapidly cooling down until eventually Godzilla completely freezes in place. There was an interesting effect on Godzilla's body. It kind of looks like his body completely fractures all over, almost like he's being frozen. It's got that same effect that you would see like when ice is exposed to warmer air and it cracks. And Godzilla just freezes like a statue.
Yeah. Turns to stone, or his body gets rock hard as stone.
Yep. The attack is successful. Godzilla, for the time being, is completely neutralized. The Japanese government, they expressed their sincere thanks to the French government for their assistance in stopping Godzilla. The countdown for the nuclear attack is officially stopped, and for the time being, it looks like Japan is safe. There's still concerns that Godzilla. There's still the matter of making sure Godzilla stays this way, and the movie pretty much comes to an end with them beginning to plan ways to permanently counter Godzilla. But for right now, Japan is safe. Just before the movie ends, it ends with a scene of a close up of Godzilla. Camera pans around his body before stopping on his tail, and at the very tip of his tail, where that face was, we see dozens of these smaller, grotesque-looking creatures coming out of Godzilla's tail, and that is where the movie ends. Now, if you want to see an image, you can quickly just do a quick Google search. Just type in Shin Godzilla's tail. You might get several close-ups of the tail as it appeared throughout most of the movie. But there's one particular image where all these little creatures, they are officially called fission beings, Godzilla's fission beings. They're just pulling themselves away from Godzilla's tail. Now, if the attack had failed and Godzilla kept moving, these things would have come off and begin to grow into more Godzilla-like creatures.
Yeah. That's where I come in. Hi. See you again. Welcome to my TED Talk. TED Talk on Azathoth. I mean Godzilla. Sorry. Slip of the tongue. So, Shin Godzilla.
Slip.
Huh? Yeah, slip. Shin Godzilla. Amazing. Icon. Legend. Lovecraftian horrors. Amazing. Love them. What if I were to tell you that Shin Godzilla is a Lovecraftian horror? Would you believe me?
No way. Tell us more about it.
Wow.
You know,
it's not like you've been preaching this for the past.
I
When did I
have
introduce you to Shin Godzilla?
a long time ago. Fuck you, Matt Chairman, giving me stats like that. How dare you?
Matt Sherman.
Oh,
The fuck?
no. Because Matt Chairman was giving me, wow, really?
Oh.
Yeah. And I said, what if I told you it was a Lovecraftian horror? So, welcome to my TED Talk of why Shin Godzilla is Lovecraftian horror.
Of course, you would jump to that conclusion with.
It's not a jump. It's real. It's true. It's factual. Thank you. I'm about to get into it.
Okay.
It is. It is factual. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm going to go over each and every form of Godzilla, including the ones that were never seen in the movie, but were meant to be put into a sequel. Because there was an art book that was released of Shin Godzilla with notes from the director and what he wanted to do for a trilogy of films with the Shin Godzilla. Form 1. Form 1 is the tadpole. It's the tail in the water. That is the very first thing you see of Godzilla, of this version of Godzilla, and all you see is the tail. The real Godzilla, the body of him is in the water, and it's formed like a big old tadpole and almost looks frog-like. It has no legs or arms. It has like a weird frog-like face in some of the artwork that shows the depiction of what he looks like in the water, and he has that long tail, so he's like a tadpole. Second form is where he goes on land for the very first time, and he's kind of wobbling along with his little itty bitty arms and these developed back legs and his tail, and as he's kind of dragging himself horizontally along the floor, and his gills are protruding out and they're bleeding because he's still in the midst of forming to be able to breathe air. So the blood is from his body trying to change to be able to breathe air, because technically he can't. That's why the first form never came out of the water, because he was not able to breathe air. He had gills. So second form, he still currently has gills, but he's bleeding everyone. That's what that red liquid was. And he's a weird yellowish gross color. And then from there, when he stands up, that is his form 3. He stands up to 2 feet. He has little itty bitty arms. His complexion starts getting a little darker, and at that point, he's able to breathe. In normal, he's able to breathe air and walk along water. He's still kind of wobbly. He's still kind of wobbling because he's still learning how to walk. Still, currently. Form 4. Form 4 is where he's completely upright. Is the form that we see that takes place in the last half of the film, where he's the full-fledged Godzilla that we all know, as far as the appearance. Stands on 2 legs, boss-ass bitch, has atomic breath. His tail's been growing throughout this whole thing. His tail's longer than him, and he is the full-fledged, like, more of the image of Godzilla that you would think of. 5. Now we're getting to the part where it wasn't in the movie, but the director wanted to implement. 5 are those humanoid creatures on his tail that was branching off his tail when he was still recharging from using all that nuclear powers. Basically, Godzilla is a personification of evolution. And side note, this movie was also Godzilla has a tendency to reflect on current times. And the way the government reacted to Godzilla in a very slow manner is also the same way how they reacted to the nuclear disaster back in the early 2010s. Their slow reaction is that they were mirroring that. Yes. Form 5, the humanoids are forming on the tail of these eldritch humanoid beings with a big hole in their head. They have no eyes. They have the spine. They have the same, like Godzilla's spine emerging on their back. And they have long, linky little arms. And they are dozens of them. This whole deal is multiplying. Being able to multiply and completely become like a legion of these little Godzillas. And there was a scene that was cut out of the movie that they thought was going to be too gross. There's one scene when they were in the middle of the building, and they were in the middle of a building or rubble, and they looked up and you see blood and stuff from Godzilla. Originally, that scene was going to have a bunch of tissue and guts that started developing eyeballs and faces because he was multiplying. So any little piece of Godzilla that they blew off would eventually form to either little Godzillas or these humanoid things. Because the whole idea of him in his Form 5 is to form a legion of these humanoid or these little Godzillas. And the main body of Godzilla in his Form 5 was also able to grow wings, which they do reference that in the movie itself, that he might be able to develop wings and fly. Now, the 6th form, there's a total of 8 forms. So the 6th form, Godzilla at this point would not need any air, food, or water in any sense. He's completely grown into a limitless nuclear fusion reactor. He sustains himself in every way. And he becomes more than just a creature. He becomes more of an entity. And he becomes like a more of a fleshy mass and then starts spreading off into space. Form 7, in this form, he would become a hive mind. As his fleshy mass would spread out throughout the universe, and Godzilla as this massy thing would just spread and continue spreading, he would develop a hive mind, take over the universe, and then he'd be able to make any element or material at will with his own body. And then from there, he'd be able to make a small universe within his body. In his 8th and final form, he would become a god in this 8th form, the ultimate life form. And he'd be able to control and sustain his own universe that's living inside of him or part of him. Because at this point, he would have devoured the universe, and it would just be him and the universe that is literally him or inside of him as well. It is him because everything inside of it would be part of him or pieces of him, of Godzilla. So he become Azathoth in the way of the mythology because Azathoth is the blind idiot god. He's the god of the universe. We're all his dream. So in the sense of Godzilla being Azathoth, we're not a dream. We're pieces. We're part of him, or this new universe be part of him. So he be full omnipotent. He just be a full-fledged godlike being that be able to create life and sustain itself and create this universe from nothing at will and do whatever with it as he would see fit. And that's the final eighth and last form of Godzilla, and that was what was intended for Godzilla, for Shin Godzilla. They were supposed to be this form into this Lovecraftian entity that would destroy the universe and then rebuild it with himself and do whatever God knows what he would want to do with it, or what this abomination wanted. And let me tell you, I read into that. I did research upon research back when I first watched Shin Godzilla and found out about this. I'm like, y'all got me fucked up. Y'all got me fucked up. Cause I'm a Lovecraft hoe. Stand that shit. And then Godzilla becomes a Lovecraftian entity, work. And I'm just mad that we didn't get the other two films out of that to explore this. Which again, I'm not surprised because the director of the movie is also the director of Neon Genesis Evangelion. So this is right up his repertoire. So I'm not surprised he wanted to do this. So if you ever want to look up any of the drawings and pages from the art book, please do so. It's fascinating to look at. And how this Godzilla is way different than the others. And more terrifying. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Why this Godzilla is the best Godzilla. And most terrifying. Thank you.
Cue applause.
Ooh.
Oh, fuck
It was
you.
an independently organized TED Talk, and it was just Zio who put it together.
It was. But we only saw up to 5 of the forms. Well, 4, and then we kind of got a glimpse of the 5th. But that was the other 3 forms we never got to, obviously, because they stopped Godzilla before he could just multiply into this mass of flesh to go up to space. Yeah, that's Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, so when I introduced this movie to Zio,
yes.
he was skeptic at first, like, oh, there was a new one? There was another Japanese Godzilla movie? Like, yeah, it came out like at this point when I introduced it to him. This was probably back in 2019, 2018, when around the time I first met him.
Yeah.
And I just remember him messaging me later, and he's like, "Oh my
God.
God. It is so Lovecraftian. I love it."
Because I got that vibe when I was watching, and this is very Lovecrafty. And then I dug into it, and I'm like, oh my God, called it. I was right.
He was living.
I was living. I'm still living to this day. I'm looking at my little itty bitty figure of Shin Godzilla that my loving boyfriend gave me. Like, but no, I will always love Shin Godzilla for that. Ugh. So
and now we are getting a sequel. When they announced the sequel, well, not the sequel, but we're getting another
Godzilla.
Godzilla, made by the original creators. And when I was reading up on it, during one of their press releases, a rep from Tohoku said that Shin Godzilla has held the reins for as the face of just the franchise as a whole for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
So it's time for something new. And we're getting Godzilla -1, and I'm just loving the design. Just loving it.
I'm just loving the violence. I hope it's violent. So now rating system. 1 to 5 humanoid abominations. So first off, Bunya, what would you rate this movie? This version, this Godzilla.
Humanoid abominations.
Yes, those humanoids at the very end of this tale, the humanoid abomination. Or we could do tadpoles. Tadpoles could be better.
What if we went with googly eyes?
Cool, we could do googly eyes.
Because when it first shows up on land, it has those googly looking eyes, and I can't take it seriously. At first, I thought this wasn't Godzilla until it stood up. And I'm like, oh, it is him. And then its form changed and the eyes got more menacing. I'm like, okay, that's the Godzilla I recognize.
Yeah. So googly eyes will be the rating system.
All right. Well, definitely got to say, I really like how, unlike an American disaster movie, it's usually like destroy it, minimize collateral damage because it's going to happen anyway, and then eventually builds up to like, oh, we're going to have to nuke it. And this one, they're like, no, don't try to attack it because there's still people around. Like they actually care about the civilians.
Yeah.
Enough
It's
to want to
refreshing.
evacuate them. And of course, that majestic scene of firing off all that purple lasers.
My favorite laser. Oh my god.
I was like, this is what I wanted to see. I like it
Gorgeous.
more than the 1954 scene of destruction from that Godzilla.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it does its usual, like, what is this threat? Oh, it's big. We're going to attack it. Oh, it's even worse than we thought. We got to come up with a serious plan, or else the Americans are going to try and solve it for us, and we don't want that.
And honestly, dropping a nuke on it probably would have jumped it to like stage 5 or 6, honestly. Or
Yeah,
further. You would become a flesh mass and going off to space after that kills everybody, which I would have loved. But
Yeah, I just want to point out they've established multiple times throughout the franchise that a nuke does not kill Godzilla. It feeds him.
yeah.
We should nuke them.
It's the only
American
way.
solution. Up a nuke.
You know what? You know what? One of the next movies, like not. I mean, they've already done this in Godzilla King of the Monsters, Legendary Pictures Godzilla King of the Monsters, where they nuked Godzilla and it fed him. But I want them to do it in like not in a sense to help him, but as an attack. Like, all right, we're gonna kill him with this nuke. They drop the nuke on him, and then he walks out of the blast zone, and he's even more powerful and more dangerous, and then he just completely wrecks everyone. That's what I want.
I mean, that's what I want too. Yeah.
I also find the character Patterson interesting because I think she's the only Japanese character who, I swear, every other line she just speaks English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be the daughter of the American ambassador.
Yeah.
But she's clearly Japanese.
Yeah. But just every so often.
Well, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the exact same thing again, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just like when she, like, I mean, yeah, she's supposed to be half Japanese. Because like she said her grandmother is from Japan, but like no, she's obviously Japanese.
Yeah, and there's no issues with that. It was just funny because I didn't expect it. I thought it was gonna be like,
Yeah,
this is the American ambassador, and then it would just be like Japanese with English subtitles. But no, it was just every so often, just regular English. You don't need subtitles. But rating wise, I'm gonna have to go with 3.5.
Okay. Well, I loved it. Still love it. Will always love it. I'm gonna rate Shin Godzilla a 4 out of 5. It's my favorite Godzilla movie. Period. The next one that probably be up there would be the King of Monsters because I love Mothra. But yeah, no. Shin Godzilla, top tier Godzilla film, my opinion, my personal favorite. I would sit there and I could sit there and watch it every week. Like I can, to me, it's rewatchable. Like I love it so much. Yeah, 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 googly eyes. And the googly eyes, sure, they're ridiculous, but at the same time, they're very unsettling. They still kind of work with the creepiness of it all. With that and the bleeding gills and shit, it kind of paints a picture of like, what the fuck is wrong with this thing?
Yeah, definitely the bleeding.
Yeah.
Very, very grotesque.
Matt Chairman?
Yeah, the googly eyes threw me off, and I had a hard time getting back into it after that. Towards the only part that really like got me into it was the laser light show whenever he shoots off against the missiles, the stealth bomber missiles. Like that was like I was like, oh my god, that's genuinely cool. Like the music was great, everything worked, it all worked together really well. But then there were other moments of the movie that I just didn't like it. I didn't like the music. It made it seem way more goofy and silly than the original, and so I just didn't like it as much because we just came off watching the original. So, overall, I'd probably have to give it like it wasn't terrible, but I didn't like it. So I would say like a 3. What did I give? Yeah, I gave it a 4. Yeah, I'll give it a 3.
Okay. So we got a 3.5, a 4, and a 3. And Housekeeper gave it a 3 as well. Housekeeper had to leave early. They said it was enjoyable for what it was, but the goofy eyes were laughable. LOL.
Yeah.
And last but not least,
Alrighty. So Shin Godzilla, for what it was really good. For me, like at this point, it had already been over 10 years since Toho had made its own Godzilla film. They had by this point passed the reins of to Legendary Pictures with Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, and then at the time that that Legendary Pictures portion of the franchise, its future was not entirely certain. Like they were planning on making another movie, um, simply because they still have the rights to Godzilla. But yeah, I was at this point I was just living because Godzilla the year before, Godzilla the couple years later, and so I was living for this for what it was. Like I said, I love it. There were several things about it that I personally just didn't think was that great either about it either. Like everyone's pointed out, the googly eyes were definitely just off-putting, and I know they were just trying. I know that he was just trying to come up with something new for Godzilla. Let's show Godzilla in different shapes and forms, make him a lot more disturbing and more uh, otherworldly and things like that, more grotesque. Um, Show him as something that is constantly evolving, which I can appreciate for. But the I feel like aside from that, there was not much originality when it came to this. to this movie. So usually in the past, whenever Tohoku had entered in a new era for Godzilla, like when it went from the Showa era to the Heisei era, and that is the series of Godzilla films from the 80s and 90s, and then of course the Millennium series, which was from the early 2000s. They always did something to change Godzilla, like drastically change Godzilla. Primarily how he looks like and his roar. So like the way Godzilla roared and how he sounded and how he acted, they changed him up, right? To make him more interesting and a lot more fresh. But the thing about Shin Godzilla was what I didn't really like was that they reused a lot of his old sound effects. So whenever he roared, like when he was still like the tadpole and he roared for the first time, he sounded like the original Godzilla from the 1954 film. And but then later on in when he was in his final forms, he sounded his roar was like that of the later Showa era slash Heisei era. So his roar was definitely not. It wasn't new. And then like I had no problems with the music of the movie. Like it was just very like yeah, it was definitely a callback to a lot of the older films, like the his typical theme music and all that. Um, they used a lot of the same practical sound effects for like the military whenever the tanks would fire their cannons, or whenever the helicopters would shoot off their guns. A lot of the sound effects were definitely from the Showa era, the practical sound effects that they used for uh like any of the military attacks, so like tanks and all that. Uh and then also there was one more thing. Oh yeah. His atomic breath when it when he started off with just the flame, it was it made that same they use that same atomic breath sound effect from the Heisei and Showa series, and then when it turned into the beam, they used that laser beam sound effect from the Showa series. So this really high pitched sound. So it just to me it just didn't seem like they used anything new. They just really like they just went. To me it sounded like it came across like they used a lot of like they just went into their vault and pulled up a bunch of old shit and were like, all right, we're gonna put this all in this movie. So that was something that I was disappointed with, and I think they should have worked on making into something new. So for what it with that all being said, I know I know I went off on a long tangent here, but I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5.
So the average score is a 3.5. Shin Godzilla is not on streaming. You would have to get it digitally. So go do that. It's worth it. It's worth the money to get and see Shin Godzilla because it's my favorite Godzilla. Stamp of approval.
And
It's a shame we
I
didn't get to see the other forms, but it's fine.
yeah. I also want to point out, his atomic breath was originally going to be its traditional blue, but when this movie came out, it came out not too long after the singer songwriter Prince passed away, and the director of Shin Godzilla was a huge fan of Prince. So as a way of honoring Prince, he decided to change Godzilla's atomic breath uh, to purple violet color in honor of the late singer.
The purple looks better anyway.
It does.
The purple looks so fucking good. It looks alien. I love it. That's what I was looking for. The googly eyes look alien. And it makes sense with the whole what he wanted to do in the long haul with it. So cool. Go watch Shin Godzilla if you like. If you want to see the latest iteration of Godzilla before the latest iteration of the Japanese franchise until -1 comes out in December. In the Americas anyway. So thank you guys for listening to today's episode and catch us next time as we finish out Kaiju month with another Shin film. Which one? Join us next week and you'll find out. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.